Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to my coverage here at Awesome Con. I'm being joined by writer and artist Matt Kindt from the great comic book Berserker that he wrote with Keanu Reeves. Matt, thank you for joining me. And how's your Awesome Con been?
Pretty good so far.
What has been some of your highlights so far this weekend?
I think that I did 3 panels yesterday, so I was running around all day, but the best one was we did a Jack Kirby panel, and Art Adams was on it, and so I'm on it, but I don't, you know what I mean? I'm a fan of Jack Kirby, but I like hearing somebody that knows more about him, talking about him.
And what made you a big fan of Jack Kirby?
Oh, I don't, it's just his DNAs and everything, you know? It was interesting on the panel yesterday, everybody's picking their favorite things, and I picked, or their favorite Jack Kirby work, and I picked Hunger Dogs, the graphic novel, and then everybody had something different. And then when we were done talking about what we had picked, people are like, oh yeah, like what of the things you didn't pick, what would you pick? And everyone started listing things that I'd forgot. I was like, oh, Inhumans and Devil Dinosaur. There's so many things he had done that you forget how much he did. And then when that happened, I was like, it's everywhere. I don't know how you can't. You're a fan of him whether you know it or not. You know.
Nice. So, as I mentioned, you did Berserker with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Which is the main thing I know you from.
Yeah.
How did this come about? Because I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed reading this.
Mm-hmm.
I was skeptical at first, but it really drew me in. How did that whole story come about with Keanu?
Yeah, no, I'll admit I was skeptical at first too. I'd done a few books with Boom. I did a book called Black Badge and Grass Kings. They're a longer series. They were like 12 issues each. And then they, based on that work, they're like, hey, Keanu has an idea for a comic. It's like, would you want to co-write it with him since he hasn't written scripts or anything for comics? And I was like, well, what's the idea? And they're like, well, it's about this warrior, kind of an eternal warrior kind of thing. And then I still was like, man, I don't know. But they're like, well, come out and have the meeting, let him pitch it to you. And then I went out, so I was like, okay, I'll listen to the pitch. And then I went out there and he pitched me the idea, which was it was more than an eternal warrior. He had this whole thing and then sort of a cosmic ending to it without spoiling it. He had an idea for where it would go at the end. And I was like, well, that's crazy. Like, that's not where I thought it was going, you know? And so I was on board. He convinced me, and then we just worked. It took us like 3 years to finish it. And it was great. He was involved in every step of the way. Like, we plotted it together, we outlined, and go over the script and dialogue, and then he'd rewrite the dialogue, and it was a once in a lifetime.
What was like when going through some of those like things, and you're obviously writing it out, and then you're drawing it, and then you're starting to see the vision come into play. Like, what was his type of reactions to things, like, especially like if you saw something that maybe he didn't see, and then you're like, hey, take a look at this. How would you feel about maybe going this direction or that direction, stuff like that? Like, what was that type of process like working with him? Yeah, because I think a lot of people want to know, what's it like to work with him?
Yeah, I know. It probably is my number one question, you know, and really we're co-writing it, so we sit down together, and then when he's not filming a movie, I fly out there and we meet, and then when he is filming something, then we'd be on Zooms, you know, like he'd film, and then at night he'd be done and tired, and then we'd still be working on it on Zooms. And we just sit and spitball. We're like, how about this, how about that? And we did that for a long time, and just the whole series, like, what do we want to do, like, where's it going, how does it end? You figure that part out, and then we'll talk about it, and I'll type up an outline, and then that's like our document that we use going forward. And so then we just sort of broke it down into 4-issue arcs, and then we'd tackle those 4 issues, and we'd do an outline for that. Like, what are these 4 issues going to look like? We talk back and forth. I'll type up a new outline based on what we talked about, and then we would break it down into, okay, so issue 1, what can we get into issue 1, and then we do an outline for that. It wasn't much different than I write anything, and then the difference was then we just sort of spitball back and forth and talk about ideas and scenes, and he'll come up with scenes, and sometimes he'll have an idea for an action or something, and he'd be acting it out. You know, it's like this and then that. And I'm like, okay, I'll type that up, and then I would contribute other things. Like he he was definitely the driver of like be the main character. And then we sort of shared Diana's role, like his foil or his helper in the book. And then there's a character called Caldwell who was more of my. I was like, we need a character like this, somebody who's going to be running like the secret cult and doing this thing, and so I would run that guy. And it was almost, in a way, it was like we were role playing the whole series. You know, he's playing his roles, and I'm moving my guys around, and we're just sort of seeing what would happen. You know, and it was super organic in a lot of ways as far as plot goes. And then he was very interested in like science and make sure we got the science right. And there's a lot of quantum physics and crazy history stuff in there. And so he would set up calls with a quantum physicist, and we'd have to talk with him to figure out how it works and like how's the idea of like this alien space pollination thing. That's kind of a little bit of an idea in there. It's an idea that quantum physicists have, you know, they talk about, and so a lot of that just came from real science stuff. But yeah, it was all over the place. It was a long process and very detailed, and but I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
It was worth it then.
Yeah. Obviously, the one question everyone knows that there was a one shot that was done. You weren't part of that one.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful for a potential sequel?
Yeah, I wrote, Keanu and I wrote a one shot, and we wrote it a while ago, and we were just giving Ron some time off because it was literally like years of his life poured into the art and everything, and he poured everything he had into it, and then we wanted to give him a break, and he wanted a break, so we wrote something, we had it ready for him, and he's in the middle of drawing it now. I don't know when it's probably coming out at the end of the year. But it's a one shot with the original team back together, and there's talk of doing another one, and I think we're all up for it. So I can't officially say anything, but I would say that if we can, we will.
So essentially, if the right story comes up,
yeah, and
it could be a potential.
And I think, yeah, it's we're all open to it.
Nice. Well, Matt, last question.
Mm-hmm.
Where can everyone find you on social media, and what other works do you have coming out soon?
Oh yeah, you can my website, mattkint.com. You can go there. Everything, you can find me on social media then from there. And all my books are on there. I do Mind Management. It's one of my big books, so you can get that. I have a new book that just came out this week called If You're Reading This, I'm Already Dead, which is like what if Lois Lane was stranded on the apocalypse kind of story. So that just came out, and Subgenre just wrapped up, but most of those books are with Dark Horse, so you can find me there.
Nice. Well, with that, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad that you've been enjoying your awesome con, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.